for many years, New Zealand actors, via our union, had been trying to get better terms and conditions on contracts. We were operating under a thing called the Pink Book, which is essentially guidelines, and they were being flouted all over the place. And we wanted to have something that was a mandatory contract. We were told that we couldn't get that because of the anti-competition laws, and that as freelancers, we weren't in any position to be able to collectively bargain. So we would go to individual productions and try and deal with them and try and get some movement, and that didn't work. So with The Hobbit coming, it became an opportunity for us, primarily because some actors overseas were being told that there was a standard contract in New Zealand and that, New Zealand actors were going to be on that. Well, that wasn't really true. There were these guidelines, and we became concerned about this, that it was going to be very obvious that New Zealand performers would be on substandard contracts to our overseas colleagues. We tried to get meetings with the Hobbit producers and were rebuffed. Then FIA stepped in, and at a meeting in 2010, the resolution was put forward that performers around the world not accept contracts until something in New Zealand was sorted out. Long story short, well, things blew up. It went crazy, and our union was sort of shown to be, well, we were seen by the New Zealand public and everybody as sort of a small group of people who were going to halt a giant international production coming from New Zealand. Now, there'd been never any word that the production was going to shift offshore because of wage demands or, contract demands. That just wasn't going to happen. It was never going to happen, and that was proved later on by some correspondence being released, that was never an issue. But what it did do was frighten the government, who flew in people from Warner's, wined and dined them, gave them everything they wanted, a huge tax break, and also changed the law with 24 hours of discussion in the House, meaning that any contractor in the screen industry, if they were contracted on something, they would only ever be able to be a contractor. They could never take any action over the status of their employment, which is terrible. So, we hadn't even gone down that track of trying to change our status from contractors to employees at all. That wasn't even the question. So a whole lot of things sort of got lumped in with the same thing, and the film was able to, go on with the surety that nobody was ever going to be able to challenge their employee status. That, I think, had come through because many years earlier, somebody who was a model maker on one of the earlier Lord of the Rings films challenged his status and won in the High Court. It went all the way to the High Court, and he won, saying that it was a sham contract. He was actually doing an employee's work. So that door was shut for all future contractors to be able to challenge their status with that Hobbit law. And it put us in Equity New Zealand under an enormous pressure, public pressure, media pressure. We were sort of, the pariahs of the country. And, it was sort of seen to be, 80 people in Auckland trying to hold up this big show, which was, the next big thing for New Zealand. Somehow New Zealand was somehow Middle Earth, and, we were going to stop that. So it was a really, really difficult time. SAG-AFTRA were fantastic, and they got in there and had discussions with Warners, because, of course, Warners were used to dealing with contracts like this. This is, bread and butter work for them. It's a daily thing. We're one of the only countries in the world that didn't have a standard mandatory contract. So it wasn't that, but I think there was pressure from New Zealand producers not to change anything because we were cheap to hire. And but knowing that we had FIA and SAG-AFTRA in our corner gave us a lot of strength, and I will be forever grateful for that. You feel very alone when you're down at the bottom of the world dealing with that sort of thing. But, coming to subsequent meetings and FIA meetings, everybody knew about it. Everybody knew what was going on. We weren't alone. It felt like we were alone at times, but we had people who had our back and did their very best to make the situation better. So I put it like this. I say we lost the battle because we never got that discussion with the producers of The Hobbit, but we won the war. And this is because after that, the producers and Equity New Zealand, the Producers Association and Equity New Zealand, negotiate a new recommended standard contract. So the old pink book was gone with these guidelines, and this new recommended standard contract was in place. Again, it could only be recommended because of the law. But since then, we have been part of the film industry working group to develop a new model for workers in the screen industry, because we're all freelancers. That means we can collectively bargain. So if you look at from 2010-11 to now 2019, we have quadrupled our union membership. We have a lot more spine. We are at the table for every discussion. We're consulted on things. We have industry support. And really importantly, by next year, this new legislation, this new model should be taken in the House and be made into law, which is phenomenal, a phenomenal change. And I don't think we could have done that without the membership growth, without the support of our international colleagues, and I think without the actors in New Zealand having sort of realised how loathed we were and actually really standing up tall and saying, this is our profession, and we're proud of it. We're proud of who we are, and we're proud to stand up for our acting community, our performer community. They say scar tissue is stronger than skin. It's tougher than skin, it's true. And sometimes you don't get the things that you want without a big fight. This was a mean and ugly fight, and, we were threatened and all of that. But I'm still glad we went through it, because I feel much a bigger part of the international community, and I feel that we're in a much stronger position.